The 12 tribes of Israel. That's a good place to start and a good place to stay centered. But how are you going to connect all these tribes, all these kingdoms, these nations, the whole world? Well, with lines. Straight ones for children, curves for marriages. This shows the same thing. And so does this, so does that. Yes, we're losing information, but we're keeping track of connections, and we're flexible enough to use multiple names. The blue ones are the most noteworthy, but we'll also mention that Rachel died as Benjamin was born. Let's get going. Backwards, to Jacob's grandfather Abraham. Where did he come from? A descendant of Shem. Not the only one, of course. Shem, one of the 3 sons of Noah. A descendant of Seth, who was born after Cain killed Abel. And Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters. Here we go. Lamech and his line did not survive the flood. Noah's 3 sons repopulated the world. Japheth, the father of the Greeks, the Medes, the Scythians, the Armenians, and Northern Europeans. Moving next to Ham, father of the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, and the Canaanites, and Nimrod built the Tower of Babel. Next we have Shem. Is this the mysterious Melchizedek? I don't know, but they tell me that we have the father of the Assyrians, of the Persians, of the other Persians, and the Syrians. But we want to get back to Abraham. He is a descendant of Eber. Hey, is that why they call him Abram the Hebrew? Over here, the father of the Arabs and the Amalekites. Also, Abraham was not the only son of Terah. Is this his half-sister Sarah? Maybe, but there's Lot, father of the Moabites and the Amorites. And the lines will reconnect if you marry your niece, which is important to us because that's where we find Rebekah, Leah, and Rachel. Moving on, wait, now Sarah's over there, and Rebekah too. But before we go further, we remember that Abraham had other children before Isaac and after. And Jacob's brother was the father of the Hittites, of Edom, and the Hivites. This is Caleb, who spied and fought alongside Joshua. Scripture calls him a Kenizzite, but also a member of Judah. We'll get to Judah later. This is a judge, the first judge, and this is why you call him a Kenizzite. Esau and Ishmael's daughter? Okay, but our focus is here, the 12 sons of Jacob. Let's start from the bottom. Naphtali, 4 clans. Next is Dan, 2 clans, and another judge. Next is Benjamin, and that's not even a tenth of it. Another judge. Pause here, it's the same Benjamin, new names, because now we focus on Saul, the first king, and his general, and 2 of his children. Jonathan was King David's best friend, and Jonathan's sister was David's first wife. St. Paul, fun fact, St. Paul is also from this tribe, and it's really big. Or is it? Here are the 70 sons of Jacob that entered Egypt. Here are the 600,000 that Moses led out of Egypt. See that? Naphtali and Dan are larger tribes with smaller trees, fewer clans. This was leaving Egypt. This is entering the Promised Land. Some tribes grew, others shrank. Overall, the population went down just a tiny bit, but the number of fighting men more than doubled by the time King David takes his census. The point, more names don't necessarily mean more numbers. Ephraim. And there he is, Joshua. We just talked about Joshua, successor to Moses. He conquers and divides the land. Manasseh means more judges, a rash vow, a coward, and a guy crushed by a rock. Asher. Not much to say except we are about half done. Gad, because we don't want to leave anybody out. And we will circle back for Judah and Levi later. No descendants of Dinah are mentioned, so next up is Zebulun. Just 3 clans. Issachar, more names to scroll through, but none for us to highlight. Reuben, the first son of Jacob, but he dishonored his father's bed, and this guy rebelled against Moses. His brother did too. Simeon, This tribe shrank more than any other during the 40 years in the wilderness. They must have joined some of those rebellions. Next up, Levi. Levi, not just a line of priests, but other forms of temple service. These were musicians. There's more drama in the next line. All right, again, we're staying with Levi, switching the clans. I see an intermarriage. Let's keep an eye on that. Moses and his father-in-law. Read more about Heber's wife in Judges 4. But Moses leads the nation and is opposed. The priestly line begins with Aaron. His 2 oldest sons die for offering strange fire. Phinehas shows zeal, but the line of high priests eventually passes down to Eli. You know him, Samuel's mentor. But his sons die and lose the ark. This guy dies when the ark is returned. And this priest lets David eat the showbread. His son aids David too, but then Abiathar supports one of Solomon's rivals and is replaced. A new priestly line for the new temple. And the final priest, led to captivity in Babylon. Oh, and where was Abiathar exiled to? Fun fact, the same hometown as Jeremiah the prophet, a Levite city. And again, the priestly line transferred from Ithamar to Eleazar after the death of their 2 older brothers. And this is the last time we'll make it all the way back to this slide, because we are going now through Judah to the Lion of Judah. When one son dies, Judah gives his wife Tamar to another son. It doesn't go well. More descendants of Judah, 2 more sons, and their mother was the same Tamar. That's irregular. He stole loot from a conquered city, and the nation suffered. Ruth, another irregular marriage situation in the line that leads to Jesus. It leads to Jesus through Jesse and through Jesse's son David, underlined because he is a king. Many children, many different wives. We said earlier that David married Saul's daughter, but they did not have children. And we include here David's sister and a captain who takes care of Uriah and Abner. Staying with David, switch for more children. Amnon violates Tamar and is killed by Absalom, who later rebels. He also rebels. That's what cost Abiathar the priesthood. But we know David sins with Bathsheba. An unnamed baby dies, and then Solomon becomes king. And there is some intermarriage with the next king, and some more, but also a direct line to the Messiah, a legal, royal line given in Matthew chapter 1, and another line, call it a bloodline, given in Luke chapter 3. The nation splits, so now we have kings in the north also, but notice that those dynasties don't last. Ahab and Jezebel are especially bad. Some southern kings are good, and that makes intermarriage dangerous. An evil queen gains control of the throne and then loses it. Still, a king needs a queen mother, and the stories continue, as does the legal line and the bloodline also. Eventually the Assyrians conquer the north, but they fail to conquer the south. Good King Hezekiah sees Jerusalem saved for a very bad king. And then later a boy king finds a book of the law, but the last kings of Judah are taken captive into Babylon. So what will happen to the Messianic line, or the Messianic lines? Exile, followed by return, organized by, you guessed it, tribe. And you're thinking we have 10 lost tribes to the Assyrian exile, but the Levites came back. They had to come back to serve at the rebuilt temple. The tribe of Benjamin comes back too, and 1 Chronicles 9 mentions the return of the children of Ephraim and Manasseh. God saves through suffering. He reaches into exile and pulls out salvation, the legal and the bloodlines, which might overlap. Also, 3 clans from the 3 sons of Judah. And this is the home stretch, and this is a genealogy of the Bible, just one possible way of putting all the names together. We watch these 2 lines converge. We read about the blue legal line from Matthew chapter 1:16, and Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. And we read about the green line. We read in Luke 3:23, Jesus himself began to be about 30 years of age, being, as was supposed, the son of Joseph. So perhaps we can change the final step to show the Holy Family and the human family. And the story continues.